So let's get into Afghanistan. This is a great segue into Afghanistan. We were talking about, what Julian said, and we'll play the video actually for you guys to hear it. But so Joe Biden, the Joe Biden administration, in specificity, has actually alleged that they are likely to have targeted airstrikes on the weapons that were the Taliban supposedly seized, according to other sources. But most we know that they were left behind, right? Planes, guns, night vision goggles, the Taliban's new U.S. made war chest. So this is from Reuters. The Taliban had posted, Afghanistan's Ministry of Defense had posted on social media photographs of helicopters arriving in Kabul, delivered by the U.S., and that's going to continue. According to Reuters, the Taliban seized most of the country, right? When they seized everything, they seized many of the weapons and equipment. We've talked about the biometric devices, etc. And so here, this U.S. official says everything that hasn't been destroyed is the Taliban's now. And current and former U.S. officials talk about the concern that there could potentially be weapons used to kill civilians and seized by other militant groups that the United States helped create and funded this whole time. And here, the Joe Biden administration is so concerned about the weapons that it's considering a number of options to pursue. This is towards the bottom, right in front of the Reuters. U.S. troops may stay in Afghanistan. They said the officials said launching airstrikes against the larger equipment, such as helicopters, has not been ruled out, but there is a concern that would antagonize the Taliban. At a time, the United States' main goal is evacuating people. So, yeah. So they're pretty much leaving an open invitation.
So using tax dollars to destroy tax dollars.
Right, using tax dollars to destroy tax dollars. In addition to, they said that they don't have numbers. The current intelligence assessment was that the Taliban are believed to control more than 2,000 armored vehicles, including U.S. Humvees, and up to 40 aircraft potentially, including UH-60 Black Hawks, Scout attack helicopters, and Scan Eagle military drones.
Fam, how is the most technologically advanced military in the world, and supposedly the most imperialist country in the world, right?
Yeah.
Just leave all their weapons of war there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like this doesn't add up.
Because the United States has given them weapons
done on
for a
purpose.
a long time. So,
it was done on purpose.
Yeah. So this Michael McCall, he's this representative, said, "We have already seen Taliban fighters armed with U.S. made weapons they seized from Afghan forces. This poses a significant threat to the United States and our allies." So they talk about the speed here. This happened so fast. No, dude, this happened fast because the United States was losing money at this point. Like, they weren't. A lot of people got rich, right? A lot of specific elite predator class
CEOs
people made
of
a lot
Lockheed.
of money. Yeah. There was mercenaries, there's contractors, and so basically, and they even admit this here, between 2002 and 2017, the United States gave the Afghan military an estimated $28 billion in weaponry, including guns, rockets, night vision goggles, and even small drones for intelligence gathering. Okay, so it's kind of ridiculous that to talk about the Taliban seizing, because this was done with the United States' blessing until it wasn't, until they left. And now it's this sort of like, oh, well, it's like a PR, coverage right now. Like, they're trying to cover their bullshit. And so, we're going to get into that more, into how that happened. But basically what's going on right now, just so you guys know, Biden sent like 7,000 troops in Afghanistan, to Afghanistan. We have mercenaries there. The call and the job offers, by the way, for mercenaries is on the rise.
Really?
Their demand. Yes.
Where do I find those?
This
calls?
is
I want to apply.
What the hell?
No, I'm just kidding.
Undercover. So
Exactly.
because now that the and this goes to Kevin's point about how the Democrats are so like, they're fake. They don't blatantly tell you what they're going to do like the Republicans. That's why in some ways they're worse, I think, too, because it's like Blinken's foreign policy is cryptic. It's just as warmonger type of foreign policy as it is as Pompeo's. It's just more cryptic. They don't tell you what they're going to do. They hide it. And so what they're doing is they're posting calls for mercenaries to go into Afghanistan more, so the public thinks we're 100% out, when it's not the case. We've removed the vast majority of our military, but we still have some soldiers and some mercenaries there. And Joe Biden, instead of, God, it's hard to say with Joe Biden, but he said, this is from RT, so obviously they're not huge fans of Joe Biden, but they said it's taken U.S. President Joe Biden a good 5 days to get over the fact that desperate Afghans fell from U.S. aircraft to escape a situation he had a role in causing. Proof that time's a healer. More on RT. So
in the picture it says, reporter, we've seen Afghans falling from planes. Biden, that was 5 days ago.
Yeah, and then he walks out. So there was,
yeah,
he won't answer that. So during the whole time that this was happening, right, just so you guys know, there was a moment where the Taliban began, quote unquote, seizing all areas of Afghanistan. They quickly took them over, and people started trying to evacuate, trying to flee and leave. And there was this whole debacle that happened where people were hanging on to aircraft, and it was horrible. And you could see like it was a whole chaotic mess. That wasn't like planned. That was them fucking up. That part was them fucking up. And so it looked like a joke. They're like, what the hell are you doing? That was real. Like that was like a complete like just mishandling of the whole thing. And that's what he was commenting on. And he was saying that was 4 days ago, 5 days ago. This is what he told George Stephanopoulos. While people, are hypocritical about Afghanistan, right? Like they're, oh, look at all those people, the refugees, blah, blah, blah. They haven't cared for the last 20 something years, right? But it's true that happened and that it was handled in a completely terrible way. I'm not against removing troops, but the way that was done was so chaotic because the United States really, really did fuck up in it just, and that's something that we can have both, right? We can say it's good to remove troops, and the way that it was done, it was so chaotic, it made the United States look like a bunch of idiots.
So let's watch this clip, yeah?
Yeah.
When you look at what's happened over the last week, was it a failure of intelligence, planning, execution, or judgment?
Look, I don't think it was a fair. Look, it was a simple choice, George. When the Taliban, let me put it another way. When you had the government of Afghanistan, the leader of that government getting in a plane and taking off and going to another country, when you saw the significant collapse of the Afghan troops we had trained, up to 300,000 of them, just leaving their equipment and taking off. That was, that's what happened. That's simply what happened.
But we've all seen the pictures. We've seen those hundreds of people packed into a C-17. We've seen Afghans falling.
That was 4 days ago, 5 days ago.
What did you think when you first saw those pictures?
What I thought was we have to gain control of this. We have to move this more quickly. We have to move in a way in which we can take control of that airport. And we did.
So you don't think this could have been handled, this actually could have been handled better in any way? No mistakes?
No, I don't think it could have been handled in a way that we're going to go back in hindsight and look, but the idea that somehow there's a way to have gotten out without chaos ensuing, I don't know how that happens. I don't know how that happened.
So for you, that was always priced into the decision?
Yes.
You want to? Yeah. So he.
Yeah. So I mean, you saw that. I mean.
Yeah.
It's just really bad.
It's bad. This whole thing is bad. I mean, it's good that, like I said, the troops got out, but there's so much. It's not over, is what I'm saying. The strategy has simply shifted, and I want to reiterate that a million times because people are still acting like Biden is some sort of deep state like attacker, like he's attacking the deep state. Look at this whole tweet thread.
Right. There's still people giving him
This
props for this, right?
Like, look at this.
Like Kyle Kulinski.
The media response to Biden on Afghanistan is proof that they dislike Bernie because of his policies. What? They're treating Biden the exact way. So now we're comparing Bernie to Biden. Great. I mean, at this point, you're right. But the way they treat Bernie if he was president and he left Afghanistan. If you cross the establishment, they don't care how many times you serve them. Of course they don't. The establishment is going to be complaining about a war. That's a given. That doesn't mean that Biden is a hero, right? But Kyle, they're just reporting true things that are happening. The issue is a matter of emphasis. There wasn't this hair of fire on fire coverage when we learned that we were funding and arming warlords with child sex slaves, or when we hit record civilian casualties just a few years ago. Of course there wasn't. But we didn't really like do everything that just happened now. That's why they're using that. There wasn't any talk about Afghanistan at all. There wasn't enough pushback from the left when Biden bombed Syria. Where was that pushback? The Afghan papers proved we were lied to for 2 decades, and internally the military was like, what the fuck is the goal? What are we doing? This makes no sense. That was in and out of the news in a day. The Afghan papers did show that. That's exactly what they showed. But how can you say that Joe Biden, who literally voted for the war and who has been for every war and who was everything he has done, including with the AUMF, everything he has done has been pro-war. You're going to say that the architect of the system is now somehow the hero.
So it looks like in these tweets, he's just like kind of talking about how the media reacted, right? So he's saying because the media reacted so negatively to Joe Biden pulling out, that means it's right.
Right,
but
that's
a naive thinking
right.
way of thinking, because they own the media.
Yeah.
So they're gonna say, it's like saying that the media would never go against its own narrative to make
right.
another narrative, right?
Right.
That they're definitely gonna do that. Like, why wouldn't they do that?
Yeah. I mean,
to make it look like, well, the media is saying that they want more war. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course.
So they'll use it. They'll use the media when they want to promote war.
Yeah.
That's the underlying thing.
Right. And it's also worth pointing out that this was not, it was planned. The United States had planned to leave Afghanistan because they don't have that much of a military type of interest. They have a natural resource interest, which is what we're going to talk about. But it was a planned thing. The United States left those weapons there. They trained and created Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. That is common knowledge. We've talked about it multiple times on the show. In the Taliban specifically with Pakistan, that all of this is happening because of the actions of the United States. So you can't really gloat about Biden, and you can't depend your analysis on what the mainstream media does, because the mainstream media does whatever serves their purpose. So that's a given. I want to point out too that Biden's such an idiot that he actually wanted to charge the Americans that were fleeing, the Americans that were stuck in Afghanistan, right? He wanted to charge them money to pay their way out of Afghanistan. This is literally hours after having a press conference where he said the opposite. And he started telling citizens, hey, you're going to have to, you are likely to be charged more than $2,000 to board an evacuation flight out of the country, while the State Department said actually yesterday afternoon that they had no intention of charging people that. And he said all passengers will need to reimburse the United States government for the flight. A promissory note for the full cost of the flight, which may exceed $2,000 per person, must be signed by each adult passenger before boarding, stated the repatriation flight request form on the website of the U.S. Embassy in Kabul. So they're like looking like a bunch of clowns, because how do you expect people that are Americans in Afghanistan to pay $2,000 to be evacuated by an action that they had nothing to do with. It's just so ridiculous. I just wanted to point that out because Joe Biden's is a moron. And it's crazy to me. This issue with Afghanistan is actually complicated because of the fact that people just want it to be very black and white. Like, Biden did a good thing. Give him credit. No. Like, we were supposed to do this a long fucking time ago. Biden has done the bare minimum, and it's only because now the foreign policy strategy has shifted. Biden didn't do this. Oh, they removed this account. Oh, I get there. It says they removed the account, but I just wanted to read it. Joe Biden voted for the Afghanistan war, the Iraq war, the 2001 AUMF, the DHS Act, and the Patriot Act. Leftists dick writing him for privatizing, not ending, the war are incredibly cringe. Again, 100%. Joe Biden is an architect of the system. Why this need to really, like, you know, make him like some sort of fucking superhero for Marvel? That I feel like the left has a tendency to do that. Like, they have a tendency to do that. Find some sort of savior for them, right? Like some sort of like, oh, cool, he's based, he's gonna save us, that's great. No, you have to understand why we're here at this point. Like, how did this come about? And I wanted to put Allie's thread because she really breaks it down here pretty well. Because the Council of Foreign Relations, just so you guys know, it's like the go-to propaganda for the State Department, for NATO, right? And even they said, we succeeded in reducing the threat from Afghanistan to minimal levels. The original rationale for U.S. intervention. And this is right here. There is one seductive argument made by critics of the withdrawal that a Taliban-ruled Afghanistan will again become a haven for terrorist groups threatening the security of the United States. This argument is a backhanded acknowledgement that we succeeded in reducing the threat from Afghanistan to minimal levels. The original rationale for U.S. intervention. The original rationale for U.S. intervention was never about like reducing like a threat of Afghanistan. It wasn't to fight terrorists. We were there for fucking money.
It was against communism too.
We were there, yeah, of course, with you're talking about the USSR and
I'm talking about
on.
Earlier on.
Yeah.
When Russia invaded.
We backed, and so we backed the Mujahideen, which were the predecessors to the Taliban. And that this whole thing like wouldn't have happened without us. So they're still pushing this narrative like this was successful and we succeeded in bringing democracy. No, we didn't do that. Fucking millions of people have died as a result of our actions. Millions of people. There was like the Taliban at their most extremist point. We supported the Taliban at their most extremist point, where they were throwing acid on women, where they were putting people's heads on a pike and throwing them around like soccer balls. We were supporting the Taliban then. Where was Joe Biden then? Where were any of these Democrats? They were supporting the effort, including Bernie Sanders. He supported the war in Afghanistan. And look at what they say. We all lost Afghanistan. 2 decades of mistakes, misjudgments, and collective failure. This was just a few days ago. But they still run narrative management, and you guys can read it. But again, this is what Ali points out. Foreign Affairs is the PR magazine for the Council on Foreign Relations. They provide opposing views, but it's really just a flip book for the NATO crowd to showcase their multifaceted foreign policy initiatives and offer a reflection of their failures in doublespeak. So in essence, they pretty much out themselves with their writing while trying to, PR approve themselves. So they said, perhaps the resurgence of a terrorist threat will develop more quickly under a future Taliban government than it would have otherwise. But to conclude that this outcome demands an indefinite U.S. troop presence would imply that U.S. troops should also be deployed indefinitely in many of the other parts of the world where the Islamic State, also known as ISIS, and Al-Qaeda offshoots are active in greater numbers than they are in Afghanistan and pose a greater threat to the United States. Moreover, U.S. capabilities to monitor and strike at terrorist groups have grown exponentially since 2001. Yeah, Yeah, so has the power of these groups, because we have created them, and now they have all the capabilities. They have all of these weapons, and that is by design. And they, and again, they're telling you that they're gonna shift their focus, because they're saying, well, if we take out our troops, and then there could be offshoots and blah blah blah. Like they tell you what they're gonna do. And this is really critical right now, because Anthony Blinken is the type of guy that is going to take this and go, run off with it, because this is what they're saying. And God, I can't even read more of their crap because it's so, but that's a good thread by Ali, trying to juxtapose, pretty much show you that they pretty much out themselves in what they say when they're trying to defend themselves. And we've already began planting the seed for intervention in Afghanistan, right? And like I said, this isn't about really 100% removing any sort of access. Like I said, we have troops, we have mercenaries, and if there's a vested interest in the region, which all of it has to go back to the Belt and Silk Road, where you're going to have China and Iran and Russia, of course, play a part into that. But the Taliban are sitting on $1 trillion worth of minerals the world desperately needs. And the world needs these minerals, or the United States? Let's be clear. Let's be clear. The title should say the Taliban are sitting on a $1 trillion worth of minerals the United States wants. Right? That's what this is about. The fourth industrial revolution. We've talked about it on this show. Basically, now we go to mining resources, taking natural resources from the global south and using them to create technology in the West. And that's pretty much what we're doing. And here they say the swift fall of Afghanistan to Taliban fighters has triggered a humanitarian crisis. Ooh, those key words. And thousands trying to flee the country. It's also brought renewed focus on Afghanistan's vast untapped mineral wealth, resources that could transform its economic prospects if ever developed. We don't care about Afghanistan's economic prospects. We care about using those resources for our benefit. Okay. In 2010, U.S. military officials and geologists revealed that the country, which lies in the crossroads of Central and South Asia, was sitting on mineral deposits worth nearly $1 trillion. Supplies of minerals like copper, iron, gold are scattered across provinces. These are the same minerals that are in countries like Bolivia and Peru. There are also rare earth minerals, perhaps most importantly, lithium. Aha, lithium. What could the United States possibly do with lithium? Do you not see, like what we've been talking about here, the fourth industrial revolution? The United States has shifted its strategy now. They're not making as much money as they were before with the whole historic, the poppy fields that were brought here to create the opioid crisis, which, by the way, similarly reflects what we did in Central America with cocaine. We had a bunch of extra cocaine the CIA had. What did they do? They brought it to countries, to this country in particular. They brought it to California. They brought it to the urban areas, and we had a huge cocaine addiction in the 80s. Like this, we do this all the time. So it was with cocaine, then it was with the opioids, and now this is a fourth industrial revolution. Lithium, rare earth minerals, etc. So this is, again, not, the United States is leaving the door open for a type of foreign policy that's going to be extremely cryptic and extremely still go after, occupy places like Afghanistan, but not so focus on the outward military presence, but just on a more cryptic type of military presence. And again, Afghanistan should be a rich nation, right? It should be, with all those resources. But look what the United States, the West, and their NATO-backed allies did to that country. Just so you guys know, the United States has also frozen nearly $9.5 billion in the Afghanistan central bank assets. This was done, I think this was published on Tuesday, confirmed on Tuesday, and that this is going to remain on the Treasury Department's sanctions designation list. So again, if the United States really wanted to help the lives of people in Afghanistan and really cared about the women in Afghanistan, they wouldn't be freezing their assets. Like they aren't going to do that. So what are the Taliban going to do? Even if you have a government, even if you have people that were working with the United States, right? And the minute the United States left, do you think those people all of them are just going to be loyal to the United States? Why? They have no reason to. The United States is majorly gone. They have mercenaries. They have people there. But at the same time, the Taliban has already, as far as we know, has actually said that they're going to try to be reasonable, that they're not going to go around and be cutting people's heads off. They've told the people as much that they're going to, forgive anybody that was working with the United States. Because a lot of people in the Taliban were. And so they're not going to attack people or, cut people's heads off or do any of that stuff. They've already said as much. But you can consider that they might see ways in making deals with China. China isn't going to do them dirty the way the United States did. I mean, as far as they know. And so that's what we're looking at too in terms of foreign policy. And the sanctions on the Taliban means that these people cannot access any funds. And this is going to, of course, always go down to the working class. It's always eventually going to go after the working class. And the Afghan ambassador that was pretty much let everybody know that Ghani stole millions. Ghani was the previous leader of Afghanistan, right? The president of Afghanistan. And he literally left. And we talked about this earlier with Kevin. He mentioned this. He left with $170 million from the country and now wants protection. This is why he's calling on international authorities, right? And, yeah.
The ambassador is calling for the arrest, international authorities to arrest the Afghan president. Yeah.
Right. No, the ambassador wants the arrest because he fled. Ghani fled with $170 million worth of money, and they didn't. He left quietly during this whole thing as everything was happening. That's the Taliban were entering the city of Kabul, and apparently he's denied taking that much money since. And he also said in a post that he fled to prevent clashes with the insurgent group and avoid bloodshed. Ghani isn't a very credible person. He's now in the UAE, United Arab Emirates. That's where he's at right now. And the people in Afghanistan view this as a betrayal. They think like he shouldn't have left. And, he's requesting Interpol. The ambassador is now requesting Interpol to arrest him. So that's what's happening. And he somehow made it that if he stayed, he would have been like killed. But yeah, there's a lot of Afghan people trying to leave America. That's why you've seen the push from people like Ilhan Omar to say we need to accept refugees and we need to
leave to America, right?
From Afghanistan into America.
Yeah.
And that's why you've seen the push from Ilhan Omar and others to accept refugees, etc. But again, while we should, it's obviously political manipulation when they do this, because this is like they haven't talked about Afghanistan this whole time, like at all, right? And so yeah, the Pentagon is ramping up their efforts to get people out of Kabul, and that's what's going on so far with that. And I wanted to point out that there was this backstory, how that the United States worked with the Taliban, and how this whole removal of troops has been in talk forever. was that you have the son of the slain Afghan hero, Masood, who is now vowing for resistance against the Taliban and seeking support from the United States. So this guy, he is the son of Ahmed Shah Massoud. He was one of the main leaders of the Afghanistan's anti-Soviet resistance in the 1980s. And so this guy has pledged to hold out against the Taliban from his home area in the Panjshir Valley. And this is the kid, right, who was like, literally, he was educated in American schools. He is pretty much like an asset.
You tell me he's like a Guaido?
Yeah, I would compare him to Guaido. I can read some of that, Johnny. The Washington Post editorial, in Washington Post editorial, Ahmed Massoud, the 32-year-old son of the former Mujahideen commander, said members of the Afghan military, including some from the elite Special Forces unit, had rallied to his cause, and he appealed to the West for help. He said, "We have stores of ammunition and arms that we have patiently collected since my father's time because we knew this day might come. If the Taliban warlords launch an assault, they will of course face staunch resistance from us." So again, God, this follows a declaration by Amrullah Saleh, one of Ahmad Shah Massoud's closest aides, who later became vice president, that he was the rightful president of Afghanistan after Ashraf Ghani fled Kabul as Taliban insurgents seized the capital on Sunday. Again, note that one of the closest aides became vice president, and he said he's the rightful president because Ghani fled. This guy was a close friend to this kid's father, who was the one of the leaders of the Mujahideen. The Mujahideen were the precursor to the Taliban. They were the ones that led to the radicalization of these extremist groups in coalition with the United States. This to me just clearly indicates that there's going to be an attempt to continue a U.S. a fight between U.S. interests that are pro-Western interests in Afghanistan versus the members who want to work more with China and Iran and Russia. That's what we see going on here. And of course, the fourth industrial revolution is going to play a part in that as to who gets what, like these minerals. This is what the wars are going to be fought on. It's the fourth industrial revolution. And as we already saw, you guys, we pointed this out with Kevin and Steve. Assange on Afghanistan is important. I wanted to have you guys view what he said because I think it just all ties together. This is Julian Assange speaking in 2011, and let's hear him once more.
Because the goal is not to completely subjugate Afghanistan. The goal is to use Afghanistan to wash money out of the tax bases of the United States, out of the tax bases of European countries, through Afghanistan and back into the hands of a transnational security elite. That is the goal, i.e. the goal is to have an endless war, not a successful war.
Right. And from the Afghan the Afghan papers, right? We don't know what we're doing. We don't know what's going on. We don't think this is winnable. It wasn't winnable. There's no winning. It's just the point was to make money. We've talked about the trucks and the convoys and how Americans as security interests paid these radicals, the Taliban, to let them push their trucks through to guard these poppy fields. That's been ongoing for years and years and years. And he says it right there. A lot of people made money, right? Into the hands of a transnational security elite, meaning not just Americans, but NATO-backed countries. A lot of people made a lot of money, millions and millions and millions of dollars. And it gets to the point where where you can't look at this and say, oh, well, Biden's great because he did this. No, this doesn't end with what Biden has done. This is just a shifting of strategy, a shifting of what the United States now sees where they're going, and they've wasted too much money. I also wanted to show this other tweet from Misty that WikiLeaks, of course, has been on the money when it comes to what the CIA and, of course, the national security strategy is. On March 26 in 2010, WikiLeaks released the PR strategy the CIA had for ensuring popular support for the occupation of Afghanistan in France and Germany. In France, the plan was to use sympathy for refugees and women. Sound familiar? Thank you, Julian. This was back in 2010. Back in 2010 when this happened. And you can see it if you click on the link, the WikiLeaks report. You can see it. It says release date March 26, 2010. The classified CIA analysis from March outlines possible PR strategies to shore up public support in Germany and France for a continued war in Afghanistan. After the Dutch government fell on the issue of Dutch troops in Afghanistan last month, the CIA became worried that similar events could happen in countries that post the third and largest force troop contingents to the ISAF mission. The proposed PR strategies focus on pressure points that have been identified with these countries. For France, it is the sympathy of the public for the Afghan refugees and women. For Germany, it is the fear of consequences of defeat, drugs, more refugees, terrorism, as well as for Germany standing in NATO. The memo is a recipe for the targeted manipulation of public opinion in 2 NATO ally countries, written by the CIA. It is classified as confidential / no foreign nationals. So this is happening again. I mean, this is the whole, they do the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, Julian Assange exposed their PR narrative. I mean, this is their strategy.
They're using it again.
The CIA, the government, when they decide to go to war, they have a strategy for how they're going to sell the war.
Justify it. Mm-hmm.
How they're going to justify it and sell it to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. And we wouldn't have that if it wasn't for the good people at WikiLeaks and Julian Assange.
Who's in prison right now.
Who's in prison suffering for over a decade now.
Yeah, and they can't even get him on the journalism aspect. Like that's what Kevin was saying. They're not discussing that. They're discussing bullshit. Oh, they didn't tell us about his relationship with Stella Morris. What? What does that have to do with anything? It's a joke. It's a joke what's happening. It's a joke. It's a dark, nasty joke. And I brought this up too because I wanted to point out there have been several tweets by several people in NATO, like in France. They've been attacking Biden, right? You can both think Biden's an idiot while at the same time talk about the hypocrisy of France and these NATO countries advocating to stay and occupy Afghanistan because, this was just so horrible what's happening. It's like they were involved. Their hands are not clean. They were absolutely 100% involved in this whole thing, and they can't just back off now. I mean, those are our allies. They're just as bad. They just don't have the massive power and military that we have. Now we are actually losing ground when it comes to military technology. Russia and China are actually are growing their technology, whereas we're not, and that's something that a lot of people haven't talked about yet. So yeah, guys, just more and more stuff in Afghanistan. I definitely want to do a deep dive onto the Afghan papers because those were a big deal. And there's so much information in that, but I just wanted to bring up an update as to what's happening now.